My name is Sophia Turner. I'm 28 years old, and I've just witnessed something that would change everything. Standing outside the conference room at Morrison & Associates investment firm, I overheard my male colleagues placing bets on how long I'd last in my new position as junior analyst. 3 months tops, laughed Brad Matthews, the senior analyst, who'd made my first week hell. Women like her don't have what it takes for high-stakes finance. Marcus Chen, another colleague, chimed in with cruel confidence. I give her 6 months before she runs crying back to whatever nonprofit she came from. They had no idea who they were really dealing with. The irony was almost laughable. These men, who treated me like an incompetent charity case, had no clue that I owned 40% of the building they worked in. My late grandmother, Eleanor Turner, had been a real estate mogul who quietly accumulated Manhattan properties for decades. When she passed 2 years ago, she left me a portfolio worth over $50 million, managed through a trust that kept my identity completely private. I'd taken this entry-level position not because I needed the money, but because I wanted to understand the finance world from the ground up before revealing my true position in the company hierarchy. Brad Matthews seemed to take personal pleasure in undermining me at every opportunity. During client presentations, he'd interrupt me mid-sentence, dismissing my analysis as too emotional or lacking market awareness. When I suggested diversifying the Peterson account portfolio, he rolled his eyes dramatically. Sophia, sweetheart, maybe stick to making coffee while the adults handle real investment strategy, he said, earning chuckles from Marcus and several other male colleagues. The client, an elderly businessman named Robert Peterson, nodded approvingly at Brad's condescending tone. Little did they know that Peterson's biggest competitor had been trying to buy my commercial properties for years. Marcus Chen was equally dismissive, but in more subtle ways. He'd exclude me from important emails, schedule crucial meetings when I was handling other assigned tasks, and consistently take credit for research I'd compiled. When our team landed the prestigious Hartwell Industries account, largely due to market analysis I'd spent weeks perfecting, Marcus presented my findings as his own work. This is why experience matters, he told our supervisor, Janet Morrison. While I sat there seething, Janet, who seemed to buy into their narrative about my incompetence, praised Marcus for his innovative approach to portfolio management. The worst part was watching how they treated other women in the office. Sarah Kim, a brilliant financial advisor with 10 years of experience, was consistently passed over for promotions, while less qualified men advanced rapidly. During team meetings, Brad would interrupt her presentations, often asking condescending questions about basic concepts she'd already explained thoroughly. "Are you sure about those numbers, Sarah?" he'd ask with fake concern. "Maybe we should have Marcus double-check your calculations." The pattern was clear. They saw women as temporary obstacles rather than permanent fixtures in their professional landscape. Janet Morrison, our department supervisor, disappointed me most of all. As one of only 3 women in senior management, I'd hoped she might recognize the subtle discrimination happening under her nose. Instead, she seemed to actively participate in it, perhaps believing that tearing down other women would secure her own position. When I requested additional training opportunities, she'd suggest I focus on mastering basic skills first. Meanwhile, male colleagues with identical experience levels were fast-tracked into advanced programs and high-profile client relationships with her enthusiastic endorsement. The breaking point came during our quarterly review meeting in November. Brad had prepared a presentation analyzing potential investment opportunities in the renewable energy sector. A presentation built entirely on research I'd conducted and shared with the team. As he clicked through slides containing my analysis, my graphs, and even direct quotes from my written reports, I felt something snap inside me. "This represents months of careful market research," he announced proudly, not even glancing in my direction. Janet nodded approvingly, while clients around the table praised his thorough understanding of emerging markets. After the meeting, I approached Janet privately about Brad's plagiarism. Her response was dismissive and infuriating. "Sophia, collaboration is important in finance. Maybe instead of worrying about credit, you should focus on learning from more experienced colleagues." She actually had the audacity to suggest that I was being too sensitive about intellectual property. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I called my lawyer, Robert Mitchell, who managed my grandmother's trust, and instructed him to begin the process of exercising my ownership rights in Morrison & Associates. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. My grandmother's trust owned the majority stake in Morrison & Associates through a complex network of holding companies and investment vehicles. The current partners, including Janet's father-in-law, who founded the firm, had been paying rent to my trust for years without knowing the true identity of their landlord. More importantly, the trust's ownership structure included provisions that allowed me to assume operational control under specific circumstances. All I needed was documented evidence of discriminatory practices, which my lovely colleagues had been providing in abundance. Over the next 2 months, I meticulously documented every instance of discrimination, plagiarism, and professional sabotage. I recorded conversations using my phone's voice memo function, saved email chains that excluded me from important decisions, and compiled evidence of the systematic credit theft that had become routine. Marcus's habit of forwarding my research to clients under his own name proved particularly useful, as electronic communications created an undeniable paper trail. Brad's public dismissals of my contributions were witnessed by multiple colleagues who could serve as corroborating witnesses. Christmas party season provided the perfect opportunity for my colleagues to reveal their true colors in front of clients and senior management. During the annual holiday gathering at the firm's downtown office, Brad had several drinks too many and decided to share his honest opinion about women in finance. "The problem with hiring women," he announced loudly to a group that included several important clients, "is that they're too emotional for high-stakes decision-making. Take Sophia over there. Nice girl, but she'll never have the killer instinct you need for this business." Marcus joined the conversation with equal enthusiasm and even less discretion. "Exactly. Women want work-life balance and family time. Men understand that finance requires total commitment," he declared, gesturing dramatically with his wine glass. "That's why Brad and I have been carrying the dead weight on our team. Some people just aren't cut out for this level of competition." Several clients looked uncomfortable with the conversation, particularly Margaret Hartwell, the CEO of our largest account, who happened to be standing nearby taking notes on her phone. The January partners meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning, and I arrived 30 minutes early to ensure everything was perfectly arranged. My lawyer, Robert Mitchell, had spent weeks preparing the necessary documentation to transfer operational control of Morrison & Associates to me as the trust's designated representative. The conference room slowly filled with partners, senior associates, and key personnel, including Brad, Marcus, Janet, and several clients who'd been invited to discuss upcoming investment strategies. Margaret Hartwell sat at the far end of the table, her expression unreadable. Robert Mitchell entered the conference room carrying a leather briefcase and wearing the kind of expensive suit that immediately commanded attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced formally, "I'm here representing the Turner Family Trust, which holds majority ownership in this firm." The room fell completely silent as he distributed legal documents to each person present. Janet's face went pale as she realized the implications. While Brad and Marcus exchanged confused glances, effective immediately, Sophia Turner will assume operational control of Morrison and Associates as the trust's designated representative and new managing director. The revelation hit the room like a physical force. Brad's face cycled through disbelief, confusion, and dawning horror as the reality of the situation became clear. "This has to be some kind of mistake," he stammered, looking desperately around the room for support that wasn't coming. Marcus appeared frozen in shock, his mouth hanging open as he processed the fact that the woman he'd spent months undermining was now his boss. Janet tried to maintain her composure, but her hands were visibly shaking as she reviewed the legal documents. "There's no mistake," I said calmly, standing at the head of the conference table where I belonged. "For the past 8 months, I've been documenting systematic discrimination, intellectual property theft, and hostile work environment violations within this firm." I activated the projector and began displaying evidence I'd compiled: recorded conversations, email chains, and witness statements that painted a damning picture of workplace harassment. Margaret Hartwell leaned forward with obvious interest, while several other clients took notes on the unfolding drama. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Audio recordings of Brad's condescending comments played through the conference room speakers, followed by screenshots of emails where Marcus had forwarded my research to clients under his own name. "This presentation analyzing renewable energy investments," I continued, clicking to the next slide, "was entirely based on my research, yet Mr. Matthews presented it as his original work during our November client meeting." Brad's face had turned an alarming shade of red as his plagiarism was exposed in front of everyone who mattered. Janet's attempts to defend her management decisions only made things worse. "Sophia, I think you're misinterpreting normal workplace collaboration," she said weakly, but her voice lacked conviction. Margaret Hartwell interrupted with sharp authority. "Ms. Morrison, I heard Mr. Matthews and Mr. Chen personally describe their female colleagues as dead weight during your Christmas party. That hardly sounds like collaboration to me." The room's atmosphere grew increasingly tense as clients began questioning their business relationships with people who demonstrated such clear professional misconduct. The consequences were swift and decisive. Effective immediately, I announced, "Brad Matthews and Marcus Chen are terminated for cause, including intellectual property theft, discrimination, and creation of a hostile work environment." Security was waiting outside to escort them from the building, their access cards and company devices confiscated on the spot. Janet's fate was equally sealed. Janet Morrison is demoted to junior associate with a 60% salary reduction and mandatory sensitivity training. Her father-in-law's partnership stake would be bought out at fair market value, ending the family's control over the firm. 6 months later, Morrison and Associates, now officially renamed Turner Financial Group, had become one of Manhattan's most successful investment firms. Sarah Kim, promoted to senior vice president, led our newly expanded team of diverse financial professionals. The company's culture had transformed completely. Collaboration replaced competition, mentorship replaced sabotage, and results spoke louder than office politics. Our client base had grown by 40%, attracted by our reputation for ethical practices and innovative investment strategies. Brad and Marcus both struggled to find comparable positions in the finance industry after word spread about their unprofessional conduct. Margaret Hartwell had shared details of their discriminatory comments with colleagues at other firms, effectively blacklisting them from major investment houses. Brad eventually took a significantly lower-paying job at a small regional firm, while Marcus left finance entirely to work in his family's restaurant business. Their careers never recovered from the reputation damage they'd inflicted on themselves. The sweetest irony was that their original bet about my staying power had been completely backwards. Not only had I stayed beyond their predicted timeline, but I'd ended up owning the entire company they thought I'd never survive in. Every morning when I walked into my corner office, the same office where Janet had once dismissed my concerns about discrimination, I remembered their cruel laughter and felt deeply satisfied with how perfectly their own prejudices had orchestrated their downfall.